Now, the Great Depression was a great time to invest. Now, you don't hear that very often, but it's actually statistically true if you stay calm. Now, the reason I bring this up is a lot of people say to me, well, look, we've looked at long-term graphs of the stock market. And yes, pretty much all the major stock markets, at least if you reinvest dividends, they do go up long-term. But what happens if something happens like the Great Depression again, or indeed something like the Japanese bubble? Well, here's the interesting thing. If you were to put $100,000 in the US stock market right at the top, you would have been down 90% during the worst of it. So $100,000, or adjusted for inflation, because obviously that was a lot of money then, would have been worth about $90,000 come 1933. So in 4 years, you would have been facing a 90% drop. However, let's say investor two had invested $100,000 right at the top and $10,000, again, adjusted for inflation, because obviously that would have been a lot of money in the 1930s, $10,000 every single year throughout the 1930s. Basically, investor two by 1937 would have made a lot of money from dollar cost averaging. In other words, because the US stock market was so weak for so many years, when it started to go up after 1933, eventually their accounts were done very well. And the same thing in Japan. Let's say you had two investors, one person invested a lump sum at the top, they would have suffered a lot, of course. If you had investor two, who put in the same lump sum, but then also invested every single month or every single year for the last 30 years, they would have actually done quite well in the Japanese stock market through these decades, for the same reason that the Japanese stock market was so weak for so many years that now it's come up, the profits would have been very good. So for example, the Japanese market was at 38,000. It went down to between 7 and 14,000 for literally more than 10 years. Now it's at about 23,000. So monthly investing reduces risk. So it means if there's a black swan event or a very unexpected, unusual event, like what happened in Japan or like what happened in the Great Depression, you can actually make sure you're reducing your risks. However, with that being said, many people who have looked at lump sum investing compared to monthly investing have found that on 67% of occasions, a lump sum will beat monthly investing. So if you've got a lump sum, it's always better to put that lump sum in, but then invest monthly with fresh money.